Welcome to Perfectly Planted Podcast. I'm your co-host, Besame Schraring. If this is your first time joining us, welcome to our show. If you're part of the Perfectly Planted community, we want to thank you for spending time with us. And we really hope you enjoy today's conversation. Daphne, how are you?
Besame, I'm doing great. How are you doing? I had a wonderful run today, which actually will lead into talking about our special guest, but I have nothing to complain about.
It's great.
Well, I know you have a lot going on with your boys having games and birthdays, and so I'm sure that you've had a busy week.
It's been very busy. As a matter of fact, I know we were just chatting about mindset. Mindset is so important. And I know we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But yeah, busy. Sometimes I wonder if I do have a full-time job or if I should just transfer into being a full-time Uber and Lyft driver, because that seems to be my evening job. As I'm sure most moms with active children can relate to. It's been insane. But anyway, let's get into our show, Daphne.
Well, I am really excited for today's podcast because I have been following our guest, Claire Bartholic, who has a wonderful podcast of her own, and we'll share more about that. But Coach Claire has helped hundreds of runners chase their dreams and conquer what they never thought would be possible. And that includes me. Her coaching philosophy combines science-based training, plant-based nutrition, and proven mindset techniques. And I know we talk a lot about mindset on Perfectly Planted, but more importantly, she's able to help runners unlock their own true potential. Coach Claire is a certified vegan running coach. She's a sports nutrition specialist. She's a mom, and it sounds like she may have an obsession with plants, which may have something to do with her beautiful background. I have to tell you, you have to read more about Claire's book, and it's going to be the focus of today's podcast to learn about her journey. And it's interesting because I think it emphasizes that we are all athletes, and we're mainly athletes at different stages of our journey. And Claire will tell you about her journey from running her first marathon to where she is now, and her ability to coach vegan, plant-based, and plant-curious runners. So if you're just thinking about adding more plants to your plate, you definitely should reach out to Coach Claire. And she understands how to take you from an aspiring runner or a run walker, and she even coaches the highest elite level runners in the area. She has a wonderful podcast. And now we're going to be talking more about her first book, The Planted Runner, Running Your Best with Plant-Based Nutrition. Claire, welcome to Perfectly Planted.
Thank you so much for having me. What a nice introduction, Daphne. Thank you.
Your background is amazing, Coach Claire. I love that.
Oh,
You must have a green
more
thumb.
If I were to turn the camera around, you would see my obsession with plants. I recently remodeled my office, which is actually a former sunroom. So I'm surrounded by windows right now, and behind me is the only wall. So all the rest of what you would see if I turn the camera around is all plants. So I have a little addiction.
That's fantastic. I love it. And we are so excited to have you on our podcast. Thank you so much. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and your plant-based journey? I know you speak about it a little bit in your book. And again, I encourage everybody to get your copy. Let's make sure it doesn't have, but I have some flagged areas as well. But tell us a little bit about your background and your journey.
Yeah, so I actually went plant-based before I got into running. Well, I was into running in fits and starts in my life, but before it really, really stuck, I had just recently gone plant-based. So maybe it was 2 or 3 months. And before that, I was kind of like a flexitarian, sort of vegetarian, did some birds and fish, that kind of thing. And then I'm sure, like a lot of people, I watched Forks Over Knives, and then boom, I was hooked. Never looked back since. My kids were really little at the time, so I do remember stealing a couple of their goldfish crackers. But besides that, it was pretty much I jumped into the deep end of the plant-based world. And So I really did it for health reasons. And I certainly had some stumbles in my journey. But that was 10 years ago now. So it's been quite a while. And then running came a little bit later. I honestly just got into it because my high school reunion was coming up and I wanted to get in shape. And so I would force myself out the door for some runs. And honestly, I hated every second of it. It was just awful, because I was just doing it, to impress people I knew 20 years ago, which is, it motivated me, but I would say that's not the most lasting way to create a habit. But when the reunion came and went, I had all this fitness that I'd built up and I didn't want to lose it. So I was like, well, what can I do next? And there was a local half marathon in my town. I'm in Asheville, which is North Carolina, which is a hilly place to run. It's harder for beginners to start running here. But I had run the same half marathon in my 20s when I was kind of getting over a breakup. And so I wanted to see if I could do it over a decade later. And I did, and I beat my time. And at that point, I started to become hooked on running.
That is impressive. So when you say hooked on running, how did you go from running that race and improving your time to now being the planted runner and writing this amazing book?
Well, my journey with running really kind of escalated quickly. So after that half marathon, I decided, oh, well, I'm going to run a marathon, and not just a marathon. I'm going to run the Boston Marathon because I heard that a friend of mine was doing it. And I was like, oh, that seems cool. I'm just going to do that. And for those of you who don't know, you can't just go run the Boston Marathon. You either need to qualify with a fast marathon or you need to raise a lot of money for charity if you want to enter that race, which I had no idea. So I did end up running a marathon. I did not get my Boston qualifying time the first time. Again, my first race was in Asheville and it was hilly. It was a really tough course. But I did get it my second try. And so at that point, I fell into the rabbit hole of marathon running. I absolutely became obsessed. It wasn't my job at the time, but I treated it like my job and just really got obsessed with learning everything that I could possibly do to become better at the marathon. Started a blog along the way to kind of document my journey. Met a bunch of people in town. My town is a big running town, so that was really inspiring. There were women in their 40s and 50s and beyond with professional lives and kids and jobs, and they were still, doing amazing things. And I was very inspired by that. And anyway, so my marathon journey, I got faster and faster and faster. And eventually I ran a sub 3 hour marathon at the age of 42, which is, if you're into marathon running, that's a really big, crazy goal. It was, my Mount Everest, my Moby Dick, whatever you want to call it. I was absolutely obsessed with getting that particular goal. And I finally got it. And, along the way, I became a coach and then got certified in sports nutrition. I do want to emphasize that I'm not a registered dietitian. So the way that I teach nutrition is more of a support role. So if you are interested in exact calorie counts and macros and things like that, that's really the specialty of a registered dietitian. But yeah, I think if people come to me who are plant-based, who are learning to be plant-based, or at least more in that direction, and are wondering how they can support their running habit, and that's exactly what I do.
That's amazing. Claire, you talk about your experience in this book as well. And I think I'm just envious completely. And I admire your dedication as well and a tenacity to get that qualification and continue to go at, even age of 42. I mean, that's a lot of people start to just fall by the wayside and say, I'm 42, like, I don't want to do anything, and you just continue to persevere. So that's amazing. It talks great great deal about your character. I love how you share tips through your experiences also in your book and through the learning journey of what worked, what didn't. I want to know, what was your favorite chapter, or what is your favorite chapter in this book, or one, specific section of the book that you really enjoyed writing and you're extremely proud about?
Well, I will tell you, I did not enjoy writing any of it. Writing a book is really, really hard. It's kind of, I think it's harder than running marathons.
Yeah.
It was a
Interesting.
very long process, the journey of writing a book. I got my book contract in December of 2020, and the book just came out in January 23. Not necessarily because of my delays, just because it was the pandemic and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of big delays there, but it was definitely a process. So a lot of how the book came together was because I have been blogging and coaching and writing and podcasting this whole time. And so I have all of this information that I've already written about, that I've already researched, that I've already kind of put out there. And it was more putting that together in book form that was the challenge of it. So I do include a few recipes at the end, mostly recipes that are my own creations for runners. I really did not want to put out a cookbook because that's not really what I do. I don't, create recipes for, lunch and dinner. I create recipes for runners. So fueling, snacks, pre-run things. I like to make dupes of running fuel, gels, whole food, running gels, those kind of things. So that kind of thing is more exciting to me than writing a chili recipe or something, or something like that, so it's very specialized to runners. But I don't know. I don't know if I would say I have a favorite chapter. I think the way that I wrote this book is you don't have to read it from page 1 to page 250, whatever it is. You can jump around to which chapter is important to you. So if you're a beginner runner, I have that. If you want to do the 5K, I have that. If you're super into marathoning, I have that section. So it's not like a novel, it's more of a guide. And so you can flip around to whatever section is, interesting to you at the time.
And Claire, I was flipping through because I have so many pages marked, and just to pull that thread a little bit, one, because fueling is so important for runners. And I've learned that. So I started running during COVID because the gyms were closed and my mental health was at risk if I didn't get to do something.
Yeah.
So even though I'd been a sprinter in high school, to me at the time, anything over 800 meters was long distance. But after COVID, now going out and running a 10-mile run on a Saturday, it's liberating. But fueling the run is tough. And so, your recipes for whether you're using whole foods or UCAN as a base, how do you start to coach athletes at any level, myself included, to understand when do you need to fuel? Do you need to eat before, eat after? You've got some great tips in your book.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually have a very simple fueling guide that I give away for free. It's at theplantedrunner.com/join, JOIN. And what that is a guide of what to eat before, during, and after your run, depending on the type of run. So first and foremost, I am an advocate of eating before every single run. I don't care if it's 4 a.m. I'm very against fasted running. Oh yeah, you found the guide. There you go. Fasted running is very hard on your body, and especially for women. Women's hormones, we are not meant to starve. When we starve, it means we can't make babies, right? And that's the only thing that our body wants to do is make babies, right? And so we are not meant to fast because our brain and our body thinks that something dangerous is happening. And so when we go for a run fasted, even if it's a short run fasted, the cortisol levels and a lot of our hormone levels are that are stress hormones, they will go up, and they'll stay elevated longer. So it's perfectly fine to have those stress hormones go up. That's what happens during exercise. It's a good thing, but it's not a good thing if they stay elevated too long. And so when you come back from that run, that fasted run, you're in more of a deficit than you should ever have been, and it will take you longer to recover. And that could affect your next workout. That could affect how you feel during the day. There's all sorts of negative effects to fasted running. But I get a lot of pushback on this, a lot, because people are waking up first thing in the morning. This is the only time that they can run. They don't want to make breakfast. They just want to get out the door. And you know what? If you're going for a 30-minute run, you have enough calories in your body. You will survive that run, of course. But you really, if you're looking at training as a whole, you're trying to teach your stomach and your brain to handle food when you run. Because if you are going to train to go longer and longer, if you would like to race, if you would like to, be faster, fueling is incredibly important to performance. So you need to teach your brain and your stomach to be able to handle food every single run. So if you are short on time, you can grab something really, really quick and really, really high in carbs, which a lot of people are afraid of, but you want to have something that's quick digesting carbohydrate. So whether that could be toast, that could be saltine cracker, that could be a fig bar, that could be a medjool date. Some of the registered dietitians that I have interviewed are now saying that we should be eating graham crackers and Pop-Tarts before our runs because they're quick, they're portable, and your body doesn't use that fuel the same way when you're exercising versus when you're at rest. So I would never say, yeah, go eat a bunch of Pop-Tarts and sit on the couch. That's probably not the best idea to do habitually, but before a run, it's actually the perfect food.
And you can find, I love Bobo's.
Bobo's, what's that?
Bobo's vegan pop. They're like Pop-Tarts.
I'll have to try those. Yeah, there are some Pop-Tarts that are vegan. Not all of the recipes, but there are a few.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Actually, I need to check out all of the recipes in here because that's what I often think that I do need to run fasted. And I'm not I will admit, I'm not a big runner, though I have run a couple half marathons and a few 10Ks. And I do enjoy that jolt of adrenaline and exhilaration. And it's something that energy within each of the races are amazing, but I do run fasted. And as a matter of fact, that's really helpful because one of the half marathons, I didn't stop to get the hydration stations and I was completely dehydrated. It was a live and learn situation for me.
Yeah.
So I think that's super helpful to understand the complex carbs or, something as long as you are running is super helpful. But you also emphasize sleep as well in your book. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the body and the brain resets and grows when we sleep, when we rest. Sleep especially is important, but there's a range for every person as how much sleep you need. So for the vast majority of people, it's going to be at least 7 hours. For athletes who are training hard, it's going to be closer to 9 hours, which a lot of people, especially busy parents, are like, what? That's not going to happen ever. But really, if you're not sleeping, sleep is the most effective performance enhancing thing that we have. It's absolutely critical. And if you're wondering why, other things aren't coming together in your life and you're not sleeping well, that is the number one thing to fix. It's really amazing how important sleep is. And if you haven't checked out the book, Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, I highly recommend grabbing that book. It's really a fascinating, in-depth discussion of how important sleep is. It is literally the number one thing that you can do for your health.
And I would also agree. And Dr. Walker's podcast is also great for those of you who may not be book fans, but we live in a society where historically we rewarded people for going and not sleeping. Besame and I have worked together, and we've lived in that world. And I think as I've gotten older, I've realized that prioritizing sleep has helped me in every other aspect of my life. So I'm glad
Absolutely.
you included that in the book. And there was one other thing. So I love to lift weights. A lot of the runners that I get to coach, I definitely try and incorporate strength training into their programs. What are your thoughts on strength training for runners?
It's absolutely necessary. So, if you think about running, we are moving in one plane. We're going forwards all the time.
Mhm.
We never go to side, rarely. We never go, diagonally. We are just trying to go forward as long and as fast as possible. So, what happens is you get a lot of overuse injuries. And even if they haven't progressed to injuries yet, you can get imbalances and weaknesses because running is a catabolic activity, which means that it can burn muscle, and lifting weights is anabolic, means you're growing muscle, right? And so you need to balance out your running with strength training so that you can be strong, well balanced, and injury free. And beyond that, it helps you gain power, speed, and strength. So I really credit strength training as being a big piece of why I never got injured.
Mhm.
Ran 9 marathons super fast, right? Got faster and faster each time. And just because I believe I was dedicated to strength training twice a week, hard strength training. It would go up and down, you don't want, you obviously, if you're running, 20-mile long run, you can't hit the gym for an hour on the same on the same day. It's going to be tough, right? So, your strength training needs to ebb and flow just like your training does. So you'll do more strength training off season and a little bit less when you're running really hard, but it'll give you a really good foundation to be able to run well. So the people who say, well, I love to run and I hate strength training, which is a lot of runners, by the way. If you just treat it like brushing your teeth or eating your vegetables, you really
Yes.
need to incorporate a little bit into your life. And the cool thing about strength training is you can do it in a lot of different ways and it can be effective. So lifting slow and heavy builds strength for sure, but you can actually build strength by lifting light, more often. There's lots of ways to get strong. There's not one way to get strong. There's benefits to both, and you can spread it out. So if you hate going to the gym, you can do 5 or 10 minutes after every run. If you're really focused on what you're doing, that can be just as effective as 2 or 3 gym sessions.
Mhm. Agreed.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, I think that I remember right before, I hit a milestone age. It was one of those things. I reached out to Daphne. I'm like, I think I really need to get back to strength training and I need accountability. I need accountability throughout the whole thing. So, it's so important and I haven't looked back as well. And it has helped for running. So I absolutely agree with, definitely making sure you find that balance between the two. You provide, I know we talked about recipes, we've talked about strength training, we've talked about, your success as a marathon runner. But Claire, we would love to know, what is a day in the life of Coach
Mhm.
Claire in terms of maybe more on the focus of what you eat?
Okay. So to be clear, I don't race marathons anymore. Like I said, like I got amazingly into it. It was my Mount Everest and I don't want to climb Mount Everest again.
Yeah.
I mean, I might do it. I might do it if my kids want to do it someday. So never say never, but I am not training as hard in running anymore, but I have really gotten into strength training. So I strength train 4 or 5 days a week and I still
Mhm.
run. I still run most days, but not for performance anymore. It's more for fitness, health, and mental health. So
Mhm.
to have that be clear, this is not necessarily what you would do if you were training for a marathon. But my routine is I wake up and I'm eating a small but balanced breakfast at about 6. And usually it is some kind of toast or English muffin, but then some kind of protein source. So It could be, peanut butter. It could be hummus with, maybe a vegan sausage kind of thing. But it's not a huge breakfast. And then I go to my office in my house and I work for about 2 hours while my kids are getting up and getting ready for school. And once they're out the door, I go to the gym or I go for a run. And when I come back, I have my second breakfast, or you could call it my brunch. I don't know. Let's call it brunch at about 10 o'clock. And that is going to be something more protein centric. So it could be a smoothie with a protein powder, or it could be oatmeal with some added protein in it. But I'm really focusing more on protein lately because I am in the gym more. But I do want to be clear, I'm not eating, keto, super high protein. I'm eating about 20 grams, maybe 25 grams per meal. So not super high. And then what I do is instead of having like a normal lunch at noon, I have my lunch at 2 o'clock. So basically I'm spreading out 4 meals a day every 4 hours. And so at 2 o'clock, I will have, lunch, and usually it's leftovers, whatever I had for dinner the night before. And then about 6 or 6:30, I'm having dinner with the family. So I have found that this plan, 4 meals a day, instead of trying to do, 3 meals, two snacks, maybe a snack, everybody gets hungry at that witching hour, when the kids are coming home, we're snacking. And I find that if I actually eat a meal, and then I'm way more satisfied and I barely ever feel any urge to snack anymore. So it's been kind of a breakthrough for me, 4 meals a day. It's just really like helped me just keep my blood sugar, steady. And I don't have that really, big cravings anymore. But, I do indulge every once in a while for sure. I think that's part of, living a balanced life as well. But anyway, that is what really has been working for me, is kind of having a little bit untraditional times of eating my meals and spreading them out more equally.
And then inquiring minds want to know about dinner time. I also have children, and so they're intrigued by what I make, but sometimes they are not, especially if you're roasting cauliflower or broccoli. They're like, what is that smell? And so even though it tastes so good, but does your family all eat plant-based?
So I have 2 kids and my partner has 3, but there's only 3 in the house at a time, right? So and they're all teenagers. And so my kids have been pretty much vegan, or at least exposed to vegan their whole lives. But their dad is not vegan. So we're not together anymore. But so they go to his house and the girls are vegan and my son is eat whatever, so he's perfectly happy eating vegan. But if we go out to a restaurant, he'll order something with chicken, or at his dad's house, he'll eat meat. So everybody is pretty receptive, but they're still kids, right? So they're still going to push back. So what we do is since we have 3 kids at home, we make them pick 2 days a week where they have to plan the meal and they have to cook.
Neat.
One of the parents will supervise. So either me or my partner, Michael, will be in the kitchen with them, but they get to pick. It's kind of whatever they want, but it's obviously with the ingredients that we have, so they can't go too crazy with it. And they're in charge. And so when they're in charge, they feel a little more autonomy and they're going to make something that they like. So, we eat a lot of pasta and pizza and tacos. Okay. So it's not all that fancy all the time, but they are learning to cook and they're learning to have that skill. And they're learning everything that comes around preparing meals for others. So I am a massive proponent of family meal. We sit down, we use cloth napkins. We, don't wear hats at the table.
That's
we
awesome.
have, that I think it's the only time we're all together. And so I treat it as absolutely sacred and super, super important. And honestly, with teenagers, it's hard to get them to talk, right? Because they are just like, how was school today? Oh, fine. But But at the dinner table, they start to open up and they start to like actually be human again and not aliens from another planet.
Yeah.
So,
I
so
know.
dinner is super important. And I think getting the kids involved as much as possible is an absolute game changer.
I love that. No, I envy that. I think it's really difficult sometimes
It is.
with the activities and everything, but designating at least, I mean, I think for some people can't have dinner together all night. I absolutely admire it. But at least, designating a couple nights and having the kids cook. I love that
Mhm.
idea.
Empowering
Having,
them.
yeah, absolutely. I love that. You mentioned mindset in the book,
Mhm.
and Daphne and I always believe in starting our day with a grateful mind, and just, taking a couple minutes and thinking about what we're grateful for. What are you grateful for today, Coach Claire?
I am so grateful for sunshine. I gotta tell you. My windows that I'm facing are all facing north, and it's just this beautiful light coming in. And when it's gray and it's cloudy, I don't know if it's gotten worse as I've gotten older or I'm just more aware of it, but everything is better with sunshine.
Sunshine.
Absolutely everything. And so it's a beautiful sunny day here today. I have
Mhm.
light on my eyes. I feel unstoppable when the sun is shining. So that is definitely what I'm grateful for right this moment.
And Claire, we are grateful for you. As we wrap up today, one of the things we love to ask our guests, and I just want to remind everyone that if you haven't picked up your copy of The Planted Runner, as you can see, I have flagged so many pages and we could probably talk for another hour, but I want to be respectful of your time because I'm sure that you are having lots of conversations about the book.
Yeah.
But could you plant one seed of positivity and empowerment with those listening or watching today?
You know, there's something special about running. And you can get into any sport that you enjoy. And if it brings you joy, absolutely keep following down that path. But there is something special about
Mhm.
the act of running that doesn't seem to happen so much in other sports. So I got to tell you, it is hard when you're starting out. It is a struggle. Even when you get good at it, there are going to be days that you struggle. But then you will find days where you are absolutely transformed mentally, physically. Your whole day gets turned around. Running is one of those things, it's like the ultimate delayed gratification. It's not always that great when you're doing it, but it almost always is great when you have done it. So what I will say is anybody can be a runner. You can start where you are right now. If you have to walk, you're still a runner.
Mhm.
If you are quote unquote slow, you're still a runner.
Mhm.
Anybody can be a runner, and it's what we're meant to do. So I would encourage you to try it. It doesn't have to be like running the mile in gym class. It doesn't have to be a torture session. Start slow, start gradual, have grace with yourself,
Yes.
and it's going to be amazing what you can do.
So much agree. And you talk about the Galloway method a little bit in your book. So definitely anyone who, whether you're a walker, a jogger, a thinking about taking up plant-based eating or just plant curious, I definitely would encourage you to reach out to Coach Claire. And if people are interested, can they just go to your website, Claire, and find out more, download your fueling guide and find out more about how to contact you?
Absolutely. Anybody can email me at claire@theplantedrunner.com if you want to get in touch directly. I do have some free resources, the fueling guide, as we mentioned, which I'm sure you'll link. And of course, the Planted Runner podcast comes out every Thursday. So
Okay.
if people are interested in getting free tips. I do interviews, but I also do solo coaching episodes. So it's
Yeah.
a mix of both. So you can learn from me and you can learn from the experts that I bring on the show. And then, of course, I have a whole array of coaching services. So it goes all the way from just being completely DIY, where I create a custom plan for you, or
Mhm.
you can join my Planted Runner team. We call it the PR team, which is super fun and affordable and really supportive group. And there's no Facebook or Zoom involved. It's all within an app, which is really awesome. So if
Awesome.
you are a Facebook hater, you don't have to, you can still join us. And then all the way up to one-on-one private coaching. So you can easily navigate to all of that stuff if you head to theplantedrunner.com.
And I remember from listening to your podcast that you have a retreat coming up too in Asheville.
Ooh, yes, yes. So September 14th through 17th, we are doing a Planted Runner retreat in Asheville, North Carolina. We're staying in these adorable luxury cabins right on the river. So we are just going to be able to run right out the door. It's going to be lots of plant-based food, totally catered. So this is not going to be roughing it, except for the running part, but you can run as much or as little as you want. And it's just going to be great. We'll have guest speakers, all sorts of activities, and lots of downtime to enjoy ourselves. It's not going to be all working out, I promise. So the early bird pricing ends at the end of February. So March 1st is the last day to get the discount price. So if you are interested in, an all-inclusive running vacation, you can go to theplantedrunner.com/retreat.
Wonderful. Claire, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on Perfectly Planted. And I want to thank everyone listening and watching. If you are enjoying Perfectly Planted and Sunday Seedlings, please feel free to share this episode and our other episodes with your family, your friends. Our goal is really to educate, empower you, and to make sure that you can live your best life possible. We appreciate you. We hope to hear from you. Please feel free to like, comment, and I would strongly encourage you to reach out and purchase Claire's book. I've loved it. I've learned a lot, and I definitely appreciate having Claire on our show today. Be well, and we look forward to being with you all again very soon. Take care.